James Brown is ready for year 2, and this young man has put on some muscle. Time for this guy to throw some dudes around in the post.
This is Tyler Hansbrough, and you're listening to Locked On Tar Heels.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? It's Thursday, August 14th, 2025. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Schade. You're joining me at the place to get your Tar Heels content every single day. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I want to thank you so much for making us your first listen or watch to get your Thursday going the right way. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season is right around the corner, so visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now. I want to welcome in a special shout out to the everydayers with us, all the great members of the Locked On Tar Heels Discord. Y'all, the first sports action is happening today. The women's soccer team is at Tennessee. Get in there on the Discord. Let's have some conversation. That link's in the show notes. And also a special welcome to our Locked On Tar Heels insiders. Great to see all of you as well. Joining me on the show today is our good buddy, Josh Marlow, rocking that horizontal Argyle for anybody who's watching on the YouTube machine. And man, it's good to be back together. If you don't follow Josh's great content already, you can find him at the Four Corners podcast, part of the Heel Tough blog. He and Anthony Pagnotta, all sorts of great football preview content getting you ready for the season. Go make sure you check that out. It will leave you ready and prepared for Labor Day. I promise you that. Marlow and I today are continuing on the summer roster preview series for the basketball team. We have now moved into the sophomores, and Marlow was with me a couple weeks ago when we did Derek Dixon as part of the freshmen, and today we're taking a nice look at James Brown. We thought was going to be the second of 2 freshmen, but now with Ivan Matlikovich in the mix, the second of 3 freshmen, sophomores, crazy stuff there. Marlow, you ready to talk some James Brown today?
I am, Isaac. I appreciate you bringing me on. Appreciate all the kind words about myself. Maybe too kind when it comes to Anthony because I'm the backbone of the things we do. But no, I'm really excited about JB. This is a guy that, as we'll talk throughout the episode, we didn't see a lot of him on the court last year. I'm a big fan of his. And so I'm expected bigger things for him in 2025, 2026. And I think this is going to be a guy that the longer he plays at Carolina and stays at Carolina, we'll grow to love him because he does the little things, basketball nuts like you and I really enjoy on and off the court.
Oh, I love a guy that gets into the nitty gritty. I'm with you, Marlow. That's a great reason to love James Brown. Also, I apologize for my overpraise of Pagnotta. I retract 50% of that and only now give him half the praise I previously did. All right, let's get into talking about James Brown. Marlow, would you hit us first with the bioblast, and then we'll get into his stats from last year?
Yeah, let's go through his bio. His name is James Courtney Brown. He's from Aurora, Illinois. Played high school basketball at Link Academy. He's a rising sophomore that plays the power forward position. He wears number 2 as of right now. That is subject to change when Carolina releases the official roster with the numbers for the upcoming season. He stands at 6'10", and last year he weighed 215 pounds. Expect that weight total to go up because our guy looks a lot more ripped going into a sophomore season. You can find him on social media, on Twitter at James Brown UNC 13, and on Instagram also at James Brown .13.
Okay, so as Marlow knows, and as you guys know, if you're regulars on the show, when we do the bioblast, we like to look at these social media handles and give them a rating 1 through 10 based on just fun or being able to know who it is, consistency from one to the other. Marlow, I'm a little confused, honestly, by the 13 because he was number 2. Was he 13 in high school? I haven't even gone back to look.
That was my initial thought as well. I cannot remember what he wore in high school, but you thought maybe that number would change when he got to Carolina and he got to number 2. The big thing is that because I'll probably give it like a 7.5 or an 8 because it's fairly consistent. That dot, though, on the Instagram might make it hard to go find him. But, I'll be interested to see maybe if the number changes to 13 this year for the upcoming season. Yeah. They can keep it at 13. But if not, James Brown, if you want me to like your post on Instagram and retweet your tweets, maybe make your handle in line with your actual jersey number. That's number 2 while you've been a Tar Heel so far.
All right, I just went back and looked while you were talking. At Link, he was 23. Obviously, couldn't do that here, so I don't know. And then we've got the UNC 13 and the dot 13. I like the 7.5, man. That's good. I also want to commend you on your pronunciation of sophomore, getting that second O in there, Marlow. That poor second O in that word always gets left out.
I pronounce it the way that Woody Durham would say it on the radio broadcast all those years. And so whenever I do it, I think Anthony is confused as to why I say it, because I will always work it in as a sophomore. But I can remember listening to Woody Durham on the radio, and it didn't matter if it was a Carolina sophomore, or a visitor sophomore. He pronounced it that way. I thought it was fun, unique. And so I pretty much go out of my way to say it that way, because if Woody Durham pronounces it that way, it's good enough for me.
It's good enough for it. That's exactly right. Well, to commend you then even further, I literally almost said very Woody Durham in your pronunciation of sophomore. So, Marlow, you're hitting the mark on it, man. Great stuff there. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm curious to see when this year's roster does come out, which I should say we're recording this a couple days ahead of Thursday. So there's potential it comes out between now and then. What do you 220, 225. What do you think it's going to say for James Brown on the roster this year?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say probably 225 is a nice sweet spot. Maybe he tops out, 230 or up, but you can definitely tell, and it's why I'm really optimistic about him this upcoming year. The body's ready to handle the rigors of playing in the post night in, night out against the schedule that Carolina plays in the non-con, and then once they get into conference play. And so you got to give a lot of credit to him for putting in the work to get stronger, because I think he's got the height, he's got the length, but he had to get tougher. And so I think, probably 225, maybe tops out at 230, but you got to like those muscles, because I think those muscles are going to be put to much better use than they were during his freshman season.
Yeah, he ain't going to be pushed around at the same level he was last year. Very excited to see how that all comes together. All right, Marlow, why don't you hit us with James Brown's numbers from last season?
Yeah, his stats last year, nothing that's going to catch your eye, but that's expected when you were a reserve freshman playing on Carolina. He played in 18 games. Carolina played in 37 total, so just under half of the games last year. He did not make a start. He averaged 2.9 minutes per game. He played in 53 minutes total. His point per game total, 1.2, scored 21 points over the season. His rebounds per game, 0.8. He had 15 rebounds on the year. You break those down even further, 0.4 offensive rebounds per game, 0.4 defensive rebounds per game. He did not average an assist. He did average 0.2 turnovers per contest with 4 miscues committed over the year. Did not average a block, something I think you could see change in a big way this year. And his steals per game was 0.1 with 1 total steal throughout the entire of the season. He did shoot 71% from the field. He was 10 of 14 from the floor, shot 71% from 2-point land, because he did not attempt a three-pointer, a much more traditional Carolina big in that sense. And he was a 20% foul shooter, although he was just although he took just 5 free throws on the entire year. So a lot of numbers there that are very limited, that I think all expect to jump in a big way, just because there's going to be more playing time for him this year. But nonetheless, there's a look at his stats from his first season in Chapel Hill.
Thank you, Marlow. Love that. As you said, there's nothing that really jumps out, because even the high numbers or low numbers are strictly small sample size kind of things. That said, 71.4% from the field is bonkers, man. 10 of 14. Is there any world? I don't think we expect his field goal attempts to take some kind of crazy jump, but obviously it's going to be more than 14 this year. Is there any way he can stay in that low 70s range as the volume goes up on his field goals? What do you think?
I mean, I think that's a real high bar to ask when you're talking about low 70 percentile. But I mean, if he can be 60 to 65%, I think that would still be a step forward. I think one of the things that's been frustrating about watching Carolina's bigs at time is Carolina has no issue getting the ball to the rim, whether it's through penetrating the post or being able just to put the ball in the block and let someone go to work. The issue has been finishing close at the rim. There's a big thing that they struggled with Armando Bacot at times last year. Until Ben Allen Lubin emerged down the back half of the stretch last season, there was almost no inside scoring presence on the roster to begin with. That's something I think that's got to take a step forward. And so I think he's going to play a lot more minutes, be on the floor a lot more. And so if he can just be a guy that when he gets the ball, whether it's through offensive rebounds or the rare post touch, but if he can convert more often than not, he'll see more playing time. And so 70% might be too much to ask, but can you shoot 60 to 65% from inside 10 feet? I don't think I'm asking too much, asking for that type of efficiency.
And that's good stuff. All right, Marlow, next we need to get to the strengths and weaknesses for James Brown as we start to look more at a scouting report. What are the things that are good for him that are going to get him more minutes this year? And what are the things that would continue to keep him in a role similar to last year where he just doesn't get much playing time? We'll evaluate and look at all those things coming up in just a second. Right after I tell you about FanDuel, August 26th is officially FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week 1 even kicks off, this is your moment. So take a flyer on the MVP race. Heck, I'm going to go with Drake May. He's at plus 6,000 right now. Maybe he just blows up for the Patriots this year. Or go ahead and crown your champ right now in August. I'm going to go with the Eagles to run it back, plus 700. They're tied with the Bills and the Ravens for the best odds. Or you could parlay your division winner dark horses. Maybe it's like you want to take a flyer on all 8 divisions. Man, that's a crazy fun parlay to let it ride. So visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now, because Futures Day is one day and one day only. FanDuel, play your game. It's great to be talking James Brown today on the show, and we move now to something of a scouting report. We want to look at his strengths and his weaknesses. We're going to phrase the strengths in this way. What is going to allow James Brown, Josh Marlow, to see the court more this season than he did last year? What are you looking at for him?
I think the first thing that jumps off the board to me that I notice when I watch him play is the energy and the effort. He just plays hard. And there was, I don't know how it was for you last year. When we were looking for a big man, I had a lot of my audience pushing James Brown to be on the court more often, but I had to tell them, hey, he's not physically ready to play the type of minutes you're demanding. But because he played so hard, Carolina fans remember that. It's a smart fan base. And so they notice things that maybe, a fan base like NC State would not be able to know and appreciate. So the first thing that I look at when I say he's going to have a much bigger role is I think it's going to be a lot harder with where his body is now to keep him off the floor, because Hubert Davis knows when he's on the court, he's going to play hard. He's going to run back and get in position defensively. He's going to crash the offensive glass. I also thought last year he was also a very good screener in the early part of the year, something that I think Carolina's got to get much better at in their half-court set. So the first thing is just the energy and the effort, because you can't coach that, you can't teach that. And he plays with the kind of infectious energy that Hubert Davis wants and demands from his guys. So not saying that he's not skilled enough to play more often. I just find it hard to think with his effort, he'll be on the bench as much as he was a year ago.
Yeah. And when, we talked about the new muscles or the development of those muscles in the last segment, when you take those muscles and match it with that energy and effort, as you said, we saw last year, and that allows him to be able to do so much more. And those are the kind of things that Hubert Davis wants that energy and effort out there, right? He always talks about discipline and details, and it seems like James Brown is a guy that brings that to the table. Now that his body is catching up, he could take that big sophomore leap that we so often think about and hear about in collegiate athletics. And so that those things could propel him on. We talked, Marlow, about his 2-point shooting. I like that you said like 10 feet and in that first segment. Is that something, in this day and age of college basketball or basketball in general, we just don't see a lot of plays for big men in the post, right? It's like, you got to go get an offensive rebound and put it back, or else stretch for whatever it is. Do you think this newfound strength matched with his effort and intensity could allow Carolina to run some plays in his direction?
Yeah, I would not be against it. I think it's going to be possible, because for as much as Hubert Davis wants to spread the floor and they want to play with a lot of space combined with a lot of pace, You look back to their best season from start to finish when you had Big Mondo down there. He wasn't chucking threes. This wasn't G League Armando Bacot. He was getting down on the block, and Carolina was playing through the post. And so for as much as I value the way Carolina wants to play, and I understand that's probably the best way to play basketball in 2025, there is something to be said about having someone that can get position deep in the paint. You dump the ball down to him, and he gets a bucket on his own. And so I do think that's more of his game. I don't see this guy stepping out and shooting 16 to 18 footers. God forbid 3-point jump shots as well. And so I still think the strength of his offensive game will be as an offensive rebounder, just a guy that can go up, grab the ball, and then convert. But I also think that, there were some post moves there that you have seen that once you knew he got stronger would be a lot more efficient. And so when he's getting a run with the second team offense, I could see a situation where they're calling a set play or two for him because they could be able to get deep post position. He turn around and score more often than not.
Marlo, let's flip it around and look at the areas that might hold James Brown back, that might keep him relegated to a similar role that he had last year, which was not much, if we're being honest. Mm-hmm. What are those things that stand out to you in James Brown's game?
Yeah, I mean, I think it really depends on just how this revamped front court really plays itself out just in terms of rotation. I think it's fair to expect, Veesaar is going to be a starter. I think Jarin Stevenson, once they figure out where they're going to use him and how they're going to use him, I think those are two guys are going to play consistent minutes from the season opener until we cut down the nets in April. It's those other guys that are going to be in between. Like, what is Zay Denis? How does his role kind of mold into? What does it look like as he's rejoining the program from, after the suspension, if you will? I think that, to me, Schade, is the biggest hindrance into not knowing just how clear his role is going to be. Because if Zay Denis is, and I imagine with him being back on the roster, he's in with good graces with the coaching staff. I think he fits more of what Hubert Davis wants in his big man, a guy that can stretch the floor. He plays with a lot of energy. If you watch some of the scrimmage highlights from the alumni game, can go up and rebound the ball on both ends of the floor. I think that's the thing that could maybe stand in his way from him taking a much bigger step forward. Nonetheless, I think in November and December, he is going to play a consistent 6, 8, 10 minutes a night. It's what does it look like when you get into conference play? And I think depending on how Zay Denis' role emerges, really will impact what we see from James Brown.
That makes a ton of sense to me. And Marlo, this is something I've wrestled with some. Is it just strictly lack of experience? Is it lack of developed post moves? Is it lack of ability to stretch out to the 3-point line like you just talked about with Zay Denis? Is there anything specific for you that you pinpoint with James Brown that it's like, man, it's just not there yet, but let's give it to junior or senior year James Brown, assuming he stays around, and that'll be ready? What is it that doesn't have him ready to be that level right now?
I would say it's a refined offensive game. Just not, it's not just it's very, I guess, muddy is the best way I'd put it, because he gets, so much of the stuff he generates is off of effort and off of energy. And that's, while we appreciate that as a coach, it's a lot harder to put a guy on the court and expect that to be the only way that he can generate anything productive. But this is where I think the criticism, really comes in for Sean May, who coaches the big men, and there's been a lot of criticism gone his way, is that, the Carolina hasn't maybe developed big men the way that we were accustomed to under Roy Williams. You got to take it with a grain of salt. Roy Williams was always one of the best big men coaches in the country because of how important they were to the Carolina system. But it's not like, James Brown was, yes, a back-end 4-star recruit, but he was a 4-star that played at a Link Academy that produces a lot of, high major Division I college basketball players. And right. So I kind of pinpoint him toward a guy like, how Joel James was just this energy effort guy that all the fans love because he did the stuff on the bench. But you go back to the year when Carolina won the national title game in 2016, he was an integral part of what that team did on both ends of the floor. I'm not saying that's what James Brown is going to be. That's a comp I like to use. And, for some guys, it does take until their senior year for them to become a decent player. Look at Bryce Johnson. I mean, he was an efficient reserve scorer, but he wasn't a dominant force until his senior year in college. And so it could just be a case for James Brown where, as he's still growing and filling out his body, it's going to take until maybe his junior or senior year to become the best version he can be on the basketball floor.
And I'm really hopeful that it's funny because I think we've talked about this with other players. I think I said it about Isaiah Denis. I'm really hopeful that James Brown sees that vision and stays the course, stays at Carolina, and we can see what we're just not seeing much anymore. Guys legitimately wanting to be developed and becoming fully who they can be. And Bryce Johnson is such a great example of that. So, Marlow, we want to wrap the show today with several fun conversations. I want to ask you to be Coach Davis, put on your Hubert Davis hat, and give James Brown 3 things you want to see him working on this offseason. We'll talk about expected role, minutes per game, give him a floor and a ceiling, our bold predictions, and an over-under, all coming up in just a second. Right after I tell you about our friends at Wayfair, as summer is winding down, there's something nice about getting back into that routine you love and know. And Wayfair makes it easy to set yourself up well for that season ahead. From bedding and linens to storage solutions for every single room, Wayfair is your one-stop shop to refresh your home. As we head into the fall, which, by the way, is the best season for all of you summer truthers out there, it's a perfect time to refresh and update with some furniture. We're planning to make some changes right here in this room I'm sitting in, my podcasting studio, and Wayfair, man, is the perfect help for that. I find stuff all the time that I'm like, I want that for my podcast studio, helping organize, update this space, and so much more. With Wayfair, the delivery is fast and free, even for something big like a couch or desk or whatever it is. And don't forget, all this comes at a price that can fit your budget. So get organized, refreshed, and back to routine for way less. Head to wayfair.com right now to shop all things home. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. All right, Marlow, let's kind of have some superlatives, some miscellaneous chatter about James Brown. First off, please, my man, if you would, put on your Hubert Davis hat and give us 3 things that you would have said to James Brown heading into this offseason to be working on ahead of the 25-26 campaign.
Well, I'm glad that after 28 years of life, Schade, you've made my dream come true. I'm now the head coach of Carolina basketball, something that no one should ever give me that kind of power or authority, although I crave it every much on the daily. The first thing, and we'll talk about this, I know when we wrap it, but the first thing I would have told him at the end of season meeting would be to get stronger and get in much more better physical shape on the basketball court. Just because, man, we know that it's not easy to play in the post every single night in this conference and against the type of big men that Carolina will face even in the non-conference season. And so you got to be much stronger to deal with the wear and tear on the body. That would have been thing number 1 for me. And I think he's definitely done that with some of the visuals we've seen coming out of what they've done so far this summer. The second thing would become a much more refined offensive player, develop a post move or 2 that you are confident in that you can utilize every time you walk on the basketball court. Just because it would be much harder for me to know that I'm going to get points from you just off offensive rebounds and putbacks. If you have a post move or 2 that I can trust for you to utilize, then it puts me in a much easier position to put you on the basketball floor. So I'm not playing 4-on-5 when we're on the offensive end of the floor. And then number 3, maybe this is me beginning to inside basketball, but I'm acting head coach right now. I think he had to become a better screener. When you saw him on the floor in limited action last year, it felt like it was an immediate, he got put in a pick and roll and he just didn't know what to do. He didn't know if he was supposed to blitz the screen, if he was supposed to drop back, if he was how to switch. And a lot of that was expected because he was a freshman that wasn't playing consistent minutes. But if I could see Armando Bacot become a plus defender in pick and roll action, and Armando Bacot's feet look like concrete at times, I think James Brown could be a much better defender guarding the pick and roll. And so I think these are all 3 areas where I think you'll see improvement because he's going into that all-important sophomore season. That's the year a player grows the most, according to Coach Smith. But that would have been the message to him on the basketball court, the areas I would have needed him to get better following his freshman campaign.
I love the second point about developing those go-to moves in the post. And the one tail I would add to it is the counter moves that go with those to be able to respond when a defense reacts well to that. But I think what I love most, Marlow, is your third point about the screening action, because we always think about the high ticket items, the things that everybody sees. And I love you saying to everyone, hey, pay attention to what James Brown is doing this year as a screener. Because similar to pass protection for a running back, for example, we all pay attention to how many yards you get and how you are as a receiver out of the backfield. But what makes a running back a true 3-down bell cow is your ability to pass protect, these nitty gritty little things that a lot of people aren't watching. So watch James Brown, how he does in pick and roll, how he does as a screener, because for a modern big, that's how you get on the floor and stay on the floor, man. So I love that point.
Well, I appreciate you, complimenting that, because, we spent a lot of time last year complaining about shot selection and how it felt like every time RJ was taking a shot, it was contested. And a lot of people will blame, well, maybe we're not running innovative enough sets or whatever. But when you watch as much college basketball as I know. You're the Locked On College Basketball host. You're not just watching Carolina play. But when you saw the difference in like the elite offensive teams and where Carolina struggled, look at the shots that were freed up by great screening action. I thought Florida was sensational at that last year.
Yeah.
They knew they had guards that could put the ball in the bucket. Well, let's not make them shoot a contested jump shot every single time. Let's free them up. And I thought like a guy like Aiden Houck, who I think is going to be even better this year, was a very good, even though that was his role was it fluctuated throughout the season. But it felt like he set great screen for great screen every time for Walter Clayton Jr., who was, knocking down every big three on their run in the national championship. And so it might be something that comes across as nitpicky. But for Carolina, I thought it was a big difference as to why RJ struggled so much a year ago, was that he wasn't getting freed up because the screens weren't as effective. Guys were getting through them a lot easier. And so if that's something that, James Brown improves upon and Hubert Davis can rely on him to be when they're running their action, he's going to free up their shooters to shoot the ball from behind the three-point line, it'll get him on the court more often than you might think.
Yep. Every one of those inches matter. Every little bit you can push a defender further out to give that space is great. Also, I know that if Pagnotta was here with you, he would give you crap about just calling a Florida Gator a North Carolina Tar Heel starting pitcher, Aiden Houck instead of Thomas Houck.
Yeah, that's it. I knew it was wrong once I said it.
So I gotta hold your feet to the fire on that one, because that's what friends do, Marlow. That's what friends do. No, that's great stuff, and a great point about Tommy Houck and those Florida bigs, who, by the way, are all back this year. It's insane. All right, let's look at James Brown's expected role, depth chart position, those kind of things. As you look at this, will James Brown be able to find that consistent role this year, or are we really looking for more spot minutes and that consistent role finding its spot in his junior year?
I wish I could give you a great answer, but my answer is to be determined. I don't know. I'll tell you this. Yeah. I think he'll play consistent minutes in November and December. I don't know if he'll play consistent minutes in January, February, and March, but that's because, quite frankly, we got to see if Hubert Davis can identify and develop a legitimate rotation. And when we get to conference play, we know this is who the 8 to 9 guys are going to play. This is how much they're going to be on the court during those games. I find it hard to see a world where he's not playing a lot in this non-conference schedule because of the way that it fluctuates with a bunch of bye games mixed in with, the quad one opportunities, the Kansases, the Michigan States of the world. But I think even in those games, he will be on the court in some capacity. So I kind of said the same thing when I was on here with Derek Dixon. I know that I think he'll play in November and December. I don't know how much he'll play into January, February, and March. A lot of that depends on, I think, what Zay Denis does for Carolina. Does he maybe emerge as that third big in the revamped front court? If not, I think James Brown could be a guy that plays a lot more minutes right now than you expect him to later on this season.
Yeah, and I appreciate you being willing to give it a TBD, because so much of it is going to be how he does on the floor and how others do on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
And I think all of that is going to be a factor in this. I wouldn't be shocked at all to see him get those like late first half third big minutes that we often see, like maybe just ahead of the under 4 timeout or just after the under 4 timeout, obviously as foul trouble comes out and things like that. Marlow, let's give a floor and a ceiling for James Brown this season. Ideal, everything clicks right. This is the ceiling, and the floor would be, hey, just more of the same of last year's 3 minutes a game.
Yeah, so I think the floor, very basic, is going to be where he was a year ago, does not take a step forward, is not a part of the rotation in conference play, and is a guy that when we're projecting towards the offseason, we know will no longer be a member of the Carolina basketball program and will be entering the transfer portal. I don't think that's going to happen, though. The ceiling is he emerges as Carolina's first bench option in that front court for Carolina. He's coming in over Zay Denis high. And, Ivan Matlakovic is just a guy that's a depth piece, and we're not having to worry about him maybe playing a bigger role than expected upon transferring in from High Point. And I think this is a guy that the ceiling is playing consistent 6 to 10 minutes a night in the non-con that carries over into conference play, and is a guy that is playing all, in the big games, in the big moments, when they go to Duke, when they go to NC State, when they play Virginia, when they play Louisville. He's being trusted to play and contribute in those games. And I want to make it pretty clear. I think that's possible for him. I think that's attainable for him because I think the body's in a much better shape. He plays hard. He's a great teammate. He's always a guy on the bench that's cheering on his other guys. I think Hubert Davis, really respects that and craves that from a guy that's not a starter as well. So I believe more in what the ceiling is more so than what the floor is because with a guy that displays that hard, that consistently, it's hard for me to believe he does not have a much larger role his second year in college as opposed to his first year where he got buried on the depth chart on a team that was searching for answers pretty much from the beginning of the season all the way till late February, early March.
I appreciate that so much of you both gave the floor and the ceiling, but then here's where I lean in that range. And so that I think that's helpful for people to see and understand. 2 more things to do here, Josh Marlow. Number 1 is our bold predictions. Again, folks, with bold predictions, it's things that should go wrong. You should look at this and say, boy, I can't wait for Cold Takes Exposed to find this. Good. That's what a bold prediction is supposed to be. So, Marlow, let's each give one. Do you want to go first or do you want me to go first?
I'll go first. And
do it.
This one was maybe harder to figure out maybe than even so Derek Dixon because I think Derek Dixon he'd be Carolina's leading free throw shooter, but because he was so good at that at the high school level, you expect that to translate. With James Brown, it's really hard because there's just a limited sample size. So my bold prediction, I think he'll have a double-digit scoring performance off the bench for Carolina in the non-conference season. I think that's still bold enough for a guy that doesn't have a pretty big sample size. So I'm not going to go to the conference season, but I'll say again, whether it's against USC Upstate or whoever, I think James Brown will put together a double-digit scoring output in 2025, 2026.
I like that because last year, the entire season, he only scored in 7 different games and his career high was 6 points, which he did just once. So that indeed would be a big leap, Marlow. That's a great and very specific. I love a good specific bold prediction. Mine's a little bit more generally, and so I like yours better. Mine is in line with your ceiling for James Brown, and that is that James Brown takes a massive leap, that massive sophomore step this year, and by season's end is playing as the backup 5 and has done so well, in fact, that Jarin Stevenson can solely be the backup 4, allowing James Brown to be the first guy off the bench to give Henri Veesaar a blow. That is probably, again, a bridge too far, but boy, that would mean great things for the Tar Heels if that bold prediction came to light. All right, Marlow, I've got 2 over-unders for you. One's a minutes per game and one's a points per game. You ready for these?
Let's do it.
All right, minutes per game over-under, 7. You had previously said in one of your conversations just a second ago, maybe 6 to 10 minutes a game in non-con play, and then that carries over into conference play. And so I like where my 7 minutes per game over-under sits in light of what you had said there already. And so there you go. Over under 7 minutes per game, season long.
I'm a believer in James Brown. I'm going to take the over. Now, it might be an over at 7.1, but the over still hits. So I think he'll get consistent minutes in November and December, that even if he doesn't play consistent minutes in conference play, it might be hard to take that number down. I don't think that's going to happen. So I'll take the over. I think he'll play more than 7 minutes a game for Carolina this upcoming season.
Let's go points per game. Last year, 1.2 points per game. As I just said, he only scored in 7 different games. So we're going to basically quadruple that points per game for this over-under. Over-under 4 points per game for James Brown.
I know I have him averaging or scoring double-digit points in a non-conference game. I think this one would be more affected by the role than maybe the minutes. I'll take the under, but I do think there will be gradual growth, steady improvement from what he did his freshman season. He might be a guy that averages 3.8, 3.9. But I will take the under as of this moment, but I would not be surprised if that over cashes in.
Ooh, and that would be a great thing if that over cashes in, unless it meant that somebody else was injured and he was forced into action. Then it would not be a great thing that the over cashed in. All right, that's fun stuff. Love these roster preview moments. Big thanks to Josh Marlow, as always, for jumping on and unpacking James Brown. Love all your thoughts and viewpoints on him ahead of the season. Gang, I want to remind you, make sure you go check out Four Corners Podcast, Heel Tough blog, and all the great stuff that Josh and Anthony do over there, man. Love those guys. Both their content and who they are as human beings. And that makes me all the more want to support what they're doing. Go check it all out. Guys, if you've not subscribed to the show on both video and audio, do that right now so you don't miss a second of Locked On Tar Heels. If you haven't joined the Discord, now is the time, because it's really cranking up as the action is starting this fall. That link's in the show notes. Great and an important thing for you to be a part of. Also, if you want to go deeper with the show, Locked On Tar Heels Insider Program, where you get one-on-one conversations with me, free access to all of my stats and charts and data and record books and other insider things as well. All right, guys, it's always a great day to be a Tar Heel. We'll talk again tomorrow with Coach Rob, but until then, peace.